You've seen shadows in the woods. You've heard whispers in empty hallways. But sometimes, the most unsettling things walk right up to you. A knock at your door. A stare from across the aisle. A voice that knows your name. These are 3 true stories of encounters with strangers. Strangers who don't need to break in, because they're already watching. Story 1. The woman who knocked at my door at 2 a.m. I used to live alone in a small house in the northern suburbs of Michigan. It was right after I graduated college and started my first job. A quiet place, cheap rent, no one nearby, and no one to bother me. I liked the peace. Until one night, someone knocked on my door at 2 a.m. That night, I was sleeping when I was woken up by a small, steady knock. Not rushed, not loud, but constant. I glanced at the clock. 2:08 a.m. I didn't have close neighbors. The nearest house was over 500 meters away, and the road to my place was a dead-end dirt path. No one accidentally passes by here. I grabbed my phone. No missed calls, no texts. The knocking kept going. Tap, tap, tap. Every 3 seconds or so, strangely patient. I didn't turn on the lights. I quietly pulled back the small curtain by the front door. It was a woman, standing right on my porch. She wore a simple white dress, head slightly bowed, long hair covering half her face. I couldn't see her face clearly, just her thin, pale hand knocking on the door like a machine. No car out front, no dogs barking, no sound of footsteps besides her. I called the police, reported a stranger at my door in the middle of the night. They said they'd send a patrol car in 15 minutes. I hung up, hid behind the curtain, my heart pounding like a drum. And then, she looked up. She stared right at me. No, not at the window. Right at where I was standing, behind the thick curtain, in the dark. Like she knew exactly where I was. Then she smiled. Not a big smile. No sound. Just a faint, almost mocking grin. I flipped on the porch light. She didn't react at all. Still standing there. Still knocking. After about 10 minutes, I heard police sirens in the distance. When the red and blue lights flashed at the end of the dirt road, I turned back to look at her. She was gone. No sound of footsteps. No trace. Just my front door slightly ajar. I swear I'd locked it. The police checked around the house, shining flashlights into every bush, every fence. No one. No shoe prints. Nothing. I told them everything. One of the 2 officers, the older one, looked at me and asked, "Did she say anything?" I shook my head. He just nodded slightly, then muttered something like, "It's her again." I asked what he meant, but he only said, "Sometimes there are people who aren't looking for a place to enter. Just someone willing to open the door." I moved out of that house 2 months later. Not because I was too scared, but because after that night, things started changing. I'd wake up at exactly 2:08 a.m., no alarm. I'd often see a shadow standing at the end of the driveway where the streetlight couldn't reach. One time, coming home late, I found a faint handprint smudged on the bathroom mirror. I lived alone. No one else had a key. And one night, I got a call from an unknown number, no area code. I didn't answer. A text came after, just one line. "Your door's unlocked. I don't live there anymore. I don't know who she was, where she came from, or what she was. All I know is if you hear a knock at your door in the middle of the night, soft, patient, don't pull the curtain, don't turn on the light, and absolutely, don't open the door." Story 2. The last passenger on the night bus. I used to work the night shift in downtown Chicago, and every night I'd take the last bus at 12:50 a.m. to get home. That bus was usually empty, often just 3 to 5 people the whole route, and sometimes I was the only passenger. I'd sit in the 3rd row from the door, by the window, my usual seat, my usual view. I'd listen to music, watch the hazy streets roll by, waiting for my stop near my apartment complex. But that night, something was off. When I got on, there were already 2 people in the back. A man in a black suit dozing off, and a young girl near the very end, staring intently out the window. I glanced at them briefly, then took my usual spot. The driver was a Hispanic guy I'd ridden with before. Friendly, quiet. 3 stops in, the man in the suit got off. Just me and the girl left. I turned to sneak a look. She was still in the same spot, unmoving, eyes wide open. What unsettled me was, her head was tilted at the exact same angle, like she was holding a pose to watch something. The bus stopped at another station. No one got on. The driver glanced in the rearview mirror, then turned back to me. "Do you know who that girl in the back is?" I was a little surprised. "No. Which stop did she get on at?" He frowned. "I didn't see her get on. But since the second stop, I noticed someone extra." I turned again. She was still sitting there, eyes fixed out the window, but her gaze reflected nothing, like her eyes had no focus. A chill ran down my spine. The bus was silent. No AC hum, no horns, no radio. The driver slowed down, pulling into the next stop. "Miss, this is the last stop before I loop back," he called loudly. "You getting off?" No response, no movement. I stood up, walked down the aisle, planning to call out to her again. But as I passed her row, the seat was empty. I stopped dead. I turned to the driver. He'd stood up too, eyes wide like they might pop out. We both stared at the seat we were certain someone had occupied for the last 10 minutes. I went back to my row. My headphones were still there. I picked them up, stepped toward the back door to check outside, and then I heard a faint whisper from the very last row. "You saw me, didn't you?" I whipped around. No one. No sound. I got off the bus right then. The driver didn't ask anything. He just shut the door, didn't wait, and drove off. The next morning, I stopped by the main bus station to report lost items. I'd left my transit card in the seat pocket the night before. An employee there looked at me and asked, "You were on the 1250 Route 9, right?" I nodded. She glanced at her computer, then said, "That bus. No passengers logged after 1240. The last stop reported no one on board except the driver and one person." I asked. "One person who?" She paused for a few seconds, then replied, "Unclear." The onboard camera glitched out at 12:52. But there's a snippet of audio recorded. It sounds like someone whispering. She played the file. A female voice, soft, thin like wind brushing past your ear. "Tonight, you saw me." I stopped taking the 1250 bus after that. I switched to earlier rides or booked private cars. Because if something is still sitting on that late-night bus, waiting for a glance, a meeting of eyes, then I'd already made the mistake of being the first to notice it existed. Story 3. The knocking at my bedroom window. I grew up in a small town right next to a forest where everyone knew each other, and the nights were eerily quiet. Our house was a single-story rural home, with my bedroom in the back, right up against the edge of the woods. From my window, you could see a small yard and a thick line of trees, less than 5 meters from the glass. My parents slept at the front of the house. I, at 16, was the only one with a room facing the back. It started one fall evening while I was reading in bed. I heard a faint knock on the window. Tap, tap. I thought it was a branch hitting the glass. But when I pulled the curtain, there was nothing. No wind, no movement, no one. I brushed it off. But the next night, the knocking came again. Same time, around 1:45 a.m. Same rhythm, 3 taps, a pause, then silence. After 4 nights in a row, I started getting scared. I told my parents, but they just laughed. "Probably a raccoon or squirrel, kid. There's a lot of trees out there." I agreed. But that night, I set up my phone camera to record straight out the window. The next morning, I watched the video. At the 23-minute mark, right at 1:46 a.m., a shadow passed across the glass. No clear shape, just a blurry black mass as tall as the window. And then something tapped the glass. I turned up the volume. It was clear. Tap, tap, tap. I paused, zoomed in, still no face. But I saw faint breath fogging up the glass. Someone was standing very close. I showed my dad. This time, he didn't laugh. That night, he stayed up with me. But oddly, nothing happened. He teased me. Guess it knew an adult was around and hid. I started thinking I was paranoid. But a few days later, when my parents were out and I was home alone, the knocking came back. Still at 1:45 a.m., still 3 taps, and this time, a voice. Open the door. I froze. It wasn't a yell, not a whisper, just a statement, like someone tired and cold, standing outside. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I checked around the window, no footprints, but there was a long smear on the glass like a huge hand had dragged down slowly. I called the police. They checked around, flashed lights into the forest, found nothing. One officer looked at me and asked, "How high's your window?" I said, "About 1.7 meters. I have to stand on my toes to reach it." He didn't say anything, just stared at the smear, higher than a person's reach. I begged to sleep in the living room for a few nights, but the knocking kept coming. First the window, then the back door, then the empty bedroom door next to mine. No one lived there. I gathered my courage, waited for the knock, and flipped on the porch light. When the light came on, no one was there. But the next morning, in the grassy dirt, there was a barefoot imprint, twice the size of my foot. Just one mark. No tracks leading in, no tracks leading out. I moved out when I went to college, but years later, visiting the old house, now sold to someone else, I asked the new owner, "Ever hear knocking at night?" He went quiet, then answered, "Every night, at 1:45, but only when someone's staying in that room." I didn't dare say more. I just know one thing. If you hear a knock on your window at night, steady, patient, don't make a sound. Don't pull the curtain. Because if you look out, and it's looking in, the next time, it'll knock closer. If someone knocks at your door in the middle of the night, don't answer. If a voice calls your name when no one's around, don't respond. And if you lock your window before bed, make sure it's really still closed after the knocking stops. This has been Whispers in the Dark. Subscribe if you haven't already.